The desert wind screamed across the barren wasteland, carrying dust that stung like fire on bare skin. The settlement stood fragile against the endless sand, a cluster of metal shacks and watchtowers, their surfaces already half buried by shifting dunes. People whispered nervously, their voices low, their eyes on the horizon. Something was coming. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow moving across the glare of twin suns. Then the figure grew larger step by step, slow, heavy, unstoppable. The metallic boots sank deep into the sand with each thud. The stranger wore full body armor, dark and scarred, with sharp ridges like the plates of some alien beast. Dust clung to the suit, hiding its details, but even from far away, it radiated power. No one could see the face. The helmet was thick, jagged, its visor a black mirror. A strange device glowed faintly near the throat, projecting a steady hum. And when the figure finally stopped at the edge of the settlement, the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the desert itself feared this. Armored presence. Human soldier. Someone whispered, their voice trembling. That was the assumption. To the settlers, many of them humans stranded on this alien world, the armor was unmistakable. It looked like something forged in war, designed for battlefields far away. A man, a hardened warrior, could walk like that, calm, fearless, unshaken by the storm. Children were dragged inside huts. Doors slammed shut. Only a handful of guards remained in the open, their rifles shaking slightly in their hands. The armored stranger didn't move for several heartbeats. Then came the sound. The voice, it was deep, mechanical, and unnervingly cold. I seek shelter. The modulated words vibrated through the air like metal scraping against stone. It wasn't a request. It was a command disguised as politeness. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. No one dared to step closer. The leader of the settlement, a rugged man with sunburned skin and sharp eyes, took a breath and walked forward. His boots crunched against the sand as he faced the stranger. "You're far from the war front," he said cautiously. "Why come here?" The armored head tilted slightly, almost studying him. Then that heavy voice answered again. Survival. The one word sent a shiver through everyone. It wasn't what they expected. Survival. Warriors didn't speak like that. Soldiers came with purpose orders, missions, enemies to kill. But this one sounded different. The leader gestured, and the gates creaked open. The stranger stepped forward, the sound of servos whining softly inside the armor. Each step echoed through the silence of the settlement inside. People peeked through cracks in the walls. Mothers held children close, while men muttered prayers. The air smelled of fear. The human protagonist, Athon, a young mechanic who had never held a gun longer than a minute, watched from the shadows of his workshop. His hands were greasy, his shirt torn, but his eyes were sharp with curiosity. He had seen soldiers before. They were loud, confident, brash. This one was different, too quiet, too cautious. The armored stranger stopped at the center of the settlement, standing still like a statue. The glowing modulator on the throat pulsed faintly. Ethan felt something strange then. Not fear exactly, but a question rising in his chest. Why did this soldier feel out of place? The villagers demanded answers. "Who do you serve?" someone shouted. "What army are you from?" asked another.
Oh.
"Are you friend or foe?" The helmet turned slowly, the black visor reflecting their anxious faces. "I serve no one," the voice growled. "I travel alone." The words only deepened the mystery. A lone warrior? That was rare? Even rarer was the fact that the armor bore no clear insignia, no flag, no military crest. It was as if the stranger had stripped identity away, choosing only silence and shadows. That night, as darkness covered the desert, the settlement gathered for their usual meal. Fires burned in metal barrels, casting flickering light across faces. The armored stranger sat apart, alone, still wearing the full suit as though it could not be removed. Ethan couldn't resist. He carried a small bowl of stew, his steps hesitant as he approached the silent figure. The others hissed at him to stay away, but he ignored them. "You should eat," Ethan said softly, holding out the bowl. The black visor turned toward him. The hum of the voice modulator filled the silence. "I do not require food." "But—" Ethan hesitated. "Everyone requires food." The figure said nothing, just sat there, still as stone. For a moment, Ethan thought maybe there was no one inside, that it was an empty machine, some kind of remote war drone. But then he saw it just for a second. The way the armored gloves twitched, the way the helmet lowered slightly, as if the head inside bowed in weariness. This was no machine. This was someone hiding. Later that night, Ethan lay awake in his workshop. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Why hide the face? Why disguise the voice? And most of all, why did this supposed man in armor feel like something else entirely? He remembered the whisper of the voice. Survival. Something inside him told him the truth. A stranger and far more dangerous than anyone in the settlement could imagine. The armored stranger wasn't who they thought. And soon, the desert would reveal the secret buried inside that armor. The next morning, the desert sun rose like fire over the horizon. Heat waves shimmered above the sand, painting the wasteland in rippling gold. The settlement stirred awake slowly, but no one moved with ease. Every villager still thought about the armored stranger who had arrived the day before. He had not removed his armor through the night. He had not eaten, not slept, not spoken another word. He simply stood on the edge of the settlement, staring into the dunes as if waiting for something or someone. Children whispered that maybe he wasn't even alive. Some said he was a ghost from the old wars, cursed to wander forever in armor. Others swore he was a killer sent by distant armies, waiting for the order to strike. But Ethan, the mechanic, could not shake the strange feeling. He had noticed the slight twitch of the hands, the bow of the helmet, the quietness that didn't belong to a soldier. That morning, Ethan decided to see for himself. He carried his toolbox across the sand. Pretending to check one of the watchtowers near where the armored stranger stood, his heart pounded louder than the crunch of his boots, but he forced himself to keep moving. The closer he got, the heavier the air seemed, as if the armor radiated its own gravity. The black visor turned slowly, following him. Ethan stopped only a few meters away. He swallowed hard. "Do you need help with your armor? Looks like it's been damaged." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the modulator crackled alive. "I require no help." The voice was deep, almost inhuman. But Ethan caught something beneath it, a tiny flicker, like a second voice trapped inside. Struggling to break free, he narrowed his eyes. "I'm a mechanic," Ethan said carefully. "I fix things. And that suit, it's not just armor, is it? It's hiding something." The stranger took a step forward. The ground seemed to shake under the weight. The villagers watching from a distance tensed, ready to grab their weapons. Ethan stood frozen, but he didn't run. The visor stopped inches from his face. The hum of the modulator filled the air. Then words came, softer this time. "You see too much." Before Ethan could respond, a loud alarm rang through the settlement. Dust clouds rose in the distance. Raiders. A convoy of armored bikes roared across the desert, their engines howling like beasts. Raiders scavenged from the ruins of old wars, attacking weak settlements for food, fuel, and slaves. The villagers panicked. Guards scrambled to the walls. Mothers pulled children into cellars. Ethan turned toward the chaos, but the armored stranger didn't move, simply watched the raiders approach. The leader of the settlement rushed to the stranger. "If you're really a soldier, now's the time to prove it. Fight with us." For a moment, everyone held their breath. Would the armored stranger fighter turn his back? Then the modulator growled, "I fight, only if forced." The raiders hit the settlement like a storm, bullets tearing through the watchtowers, smoke filling the air. Ethan ducked behind a metal crate, heart hammering in his chest. He saw villagers falling, guards screaming, fire spreading. Then he saw something else, the armored stranger walking into the chaos. Not running, not charging, just walking. A raider aimed a blaster at him and fired. The shot sparked against the chest plate. The stranger didn't even flinch. In seconds, he was among them. A single armored fist swung into raider flew backward, body crumpling. Another swung a blade, but the armored gauntlet caught it easily, twisting until the weapon snapped. The villagers gasped. The raiders shouted in panic, but Ethan wasn't watching the fight. He was watching the armor itself. For the first time, he noticed something: the way small cracks along the shoulder plate glowed faintly, as if light was leaking out from underneath. It wasn't human light. It was soft, blue, almost alive. The stranger fought with precision, each move careful but devastating. No wasted motion, no battle cries, just silent, efficient strikes. Within minutes, the raiders began retreating, dragging their wounded back to their bikes. Dust swallowed them again as they fled into the desert. The villagers erupted into cheers. But they quickly turned to fear again when the stranger simply stood among the wreckage. Silent, unmoving, visor glinting black. Ethan, still crouched, realized his hands were shaking, not from fear of the raiders, but from the question burning inside him. What was hiding under that armor? Later, after the fires were put out and the wounded treated, Ethan found himself face to face with the stranger again. This time, the village leader was present too. "You saved us," the leader admitted grudgingly. "But we need to know who you are. You can't trust someone who hides behind a mask." The armored figure was silent, and finally the modulator spoke. "My identity is not for you." Ethan couldn't stop himself. "Then at least tell me why your armor glows." The visor tilted toward him sharply, as if surprised. For a moment, Ethan thought he had gone too far, that the armored stranger would crush him where he stood. But instead, the figure turned away. "No one must know," the voice said. Softer this time, almost. Fragile, the leader frowned, confused. Ethan's heart raced. He had heard it again, the layer beneath the modulator, faint but clear. A voice that wasn't deep and metallic, but something else. Higher, softer. The armored stranger wasn't just hiding scars. He was hiding identity, and Ethan had just taken the first step toward uncovering the truth. That night, as the desert was quiet again, but inside the settlement, tension burned stronger than ever. Some called the stranger a savior, or others whispered he was a monster. But Ethan knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary man in armor, and the first crack in the disguise had just appeared. The desert wind had calmed, but inside the settlement, unease grew heavier with each passing hour. The raiders were gone, yet the villagers whispered louder than before. They had seen the armored stranger fight, seen the impossible strength, the unshaken poise, and most of all, they had seen the faint blue glow escaping through the cracks of the battered armor. It was not human. Ethan sat in his workshop late into the night, replaying the fight in his mind. He could still hear the sound of steel breaking under a single strike, still see the sparks that danced across the stranger's gauntlets. But what haunted him most was the voice, the deep metallic growl from the modulator, layered over something else, softer, fragile, different. He rubbed grease from his hands, staring at a half-reaped engine, but his mind was elsewhere. "Who are you?" he whispered to himself. A sharp metallic clang outside made him jolt. He rushed out and saw the armored stranger in the shadows near the old water tower. The figure moved stiffly, one arm clutching the side of the armor. Ethan's eyes widened. There was damage. The battle had taken its toll. For a moment he hesitated. Then, without thinking, he grabbed his small toolkit and hurried across the sand. "Wait," Ethan called softly. The black visor turned toward him, glowing faintly under the moonlight. The modulator hummed. "You should not follow me." "I'm not here to fight," Ethan said quickly. "Your armor is damaged. If you don't let me help, it could break further." The armored figure froze. For a long moment, the desert was silent except for the rustle of wind. Then, slowly, the stranger nodded. Ethan's heart thudded as he approached. He had never been this close before. The armor towered over him, scratched and dented, scarred by years of battles. Up close, he could see faint lines of alien symbols etched into the plate, symbols he didn't recognize. "Sit," Ethan whispered, gesturing toward a flat rock. To his surprise, the stranger obeyed, lowering heavily until the ground shook. Ethan knelt beside him, opening his toolkit. He pulled out a small light, shining it across the shoulder. Playtand gasped. The crack in the armor wasn't just a split. Through it, he saw something impossible. Not flesh, not metal, something glowing faintly, alive with shifting blue light, like veins of liquid crystal. "What? Are you?" Ethan murmured, before he could stop himself. The helmet turned toward him sharply. The modulator growled, "Do not ask," but Ethan couldn't look away. His hands trembled as he worked, tightening a plate, reconnecting a power line. Every second he spent closer, the more he realized the armor was not just protection. It was a cage. Then, without warning, the damaged shoulder plate gave way with a loud snap. A chunk of armor slid off, clattering against the sand. Ethan froze, his breath caught, because for the first time he saw what was beneath. It wasn't the pale, rough skin of a soldier. It wasn't even human. It was smooth, luminous skin with a faint shimmer like moonlight caught in water. The surface glowed faintly with patterns that pulsed in rhythm like living circuits. And through the exposed gap, Ethan caught a glimpse of delicate features beneath the shadow's slender, too graceful to belong to a man. He stumbled back, stunned. "You're not." His voice shook. "You're not a man." The armored figure snapped the gauntlet up, gripping the loose plate back into place, as if trying to hide the glimpse. The modulator crackled violently. "You saw nothing." Ethan's mind was already racing.
Yes.
The voice, the hidden softness beneath the growl, the glow, the grace in the movements, it all connected in a flash of clarity. "Your girl." For the first time, the armored figure flinched, the helmet tilted downward, silent, as if the desert itself held its breath. The modulator buzzed. Weakly, but the words came slower, heavier. "If they knew, they would destroy me." Ethan's eyes widened. The villagers, they would panic, call her a monster, or worse, use her as a weapon. He knew their fear. He had heard their whispers. But right now, looking at her trembling hands, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone exhausted from hiding, someone carrying a burden too heavy for one person. "I won't tell them," Ethan whispered firmly. The helmet turned toward him again, visor reflecting his face. For the first time, there was silence from the modulator. Then something faint, almost impossible to hear, a voice leaking beneath the machine. "Why do you protect me?" Ethan swallowed hard, because no one deserves to hide forever. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, the stranger rose to her feet, reattaching the fallen plate with a hiss of power. She turned away, back toward the dunes. "This armor is my survival," she said through the modulator, stronger again. "Without it, I am nothing." Ethan shook his head. "No. Without it, you're finally you." The figure paused at the edge of the shadow, but didn't reply. She simply disappeared into the night, leaving Ethan with more questions than answers and the undeniable certainty that her secret was only beginning to unravel. That night, Ethan lay awake, his heart pounding. He had seen the truth, even if only a glimpse, and it changed everything. The armored stranger was not who anyone thought. She was an alien girl, trapped behind a voice modulator and armor that hid her very existence. And soon, the unmasking would no longer be something she could control. The settlement was restless. Though the raiders had been defeated, peace never returned. The armored stranger's presence weighed on everyone like a shadow. Some saw a savior. Others whispered of danger, a curse walking among them. But Ethan knew the truth, at least a part of it. He had seen the glowing skin beneath the armor, seen the delicate curve of features no man could possess. The armored warrior everyone feared was not a man at all, but a girl. A girl hiding behind steel plates and a machine voice. That night, as the villagers tried to sleep, Ethan sat in his workshop, turning a broken voice modulator chip in his hand. He had found it earlier among the scraps left by the raiders. Its wires dangled like veins, sparking faintly. He glanced toward the stranger, who stood silently on the edge of the camp once again, unmoving, watching the dunes. The hum of her own modulator carried faintly in the air, steady, low, mechanical. Ethan whispered to himself. That voice isn't real. The next morning, an argument erupted. The village leader confronted the stranger in the square. You wear armor we don't understand, he growled. You hide your face. You speak with a machine's voice. Why should we trust you? The black visor turned slowly. The modulator buzzed. Trust is not required. The villagers shouted angrily. Some demanded the stranger leave. Others wanted answers. Fear spread faster than fire, and Ethan knew it would only get worse. That evening, he made his decision. When the settlement slept, Ethan slipped quietly through the shadows with his toolkit. He found the stranger again by the water tower, where she often lingered. The armor gleamed faintly under the moonlight, the throat modulator glowing with each pulse. Ethan approached carefully. I know what you're hiding. The visor turned sharply toward him. The hum deepened. You know nothing. But Ethan didn't back away. He lifted the broken chip in his hand. This is a voice modulator. Yours works the same way, doesn't it? It hides your real voice. The stranger stiffened. The silence that followed was more dangerous than shouting. Ethan's heart pounded, but he pushed on. I don't care what you really are, he whispered, but hiding will destroy you. People already feel something's wrong. If they find out on their own, they'll turn against you. Finally, the figure spoke. My voice betrays me. The words sent a chill through Ethan. Slowly, the armored gauntlet reached to the throat. With a faint hiss, the modulator flickered, its hum dying. For the first time, the deep, mechanical growl fell silent, and then he heard it. Her real voice, it was soft, fragile, a melody hidden under iron. This is me, she whispered, almost ashamed. Ethan's breath caught. The contrast was overwhelming. The voice wasn't commanding, wasn't terrifying. It was gentle, almost musical, carrying a tremor of fear. No man could sound like that, no soldier either. The girl quickly reactivated the modulator. The deep growl returned, burying the truth once again. You see why I cannot be revealed? Ethan shook his head. But why? Why go through all this? Why pretend to be a soldier, a man? The visor tilted away. She was silent for a long time then. Finally, my people were slaughtered, my family taken. If they knew I survived, if they knew I was female, I would be hunted. On this world, strength is only believed when it is male. So I became him, the man in armor. Chest tightened. It wasn't just survival. It was her shield against a cruel galaxy. Your secret's safe with me, promised. But she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, visor inches from his face. The modulator growled low. If you betray me, human, I will not hesitate. Ethan swallowed hard, but he didn't flinch. Then you'll have to kill the only person who sees you for what you are. For the first time, the visor didn't turn away. It lingered, silent. The threat hung in the air, but so did something else. Trust, faint and fragile, fighting to break through the walls of steel. The next day, the villagers noticed something strange. The armored stranger spoke less, using only short commands or gestures. Her modulator still growled, but sometimes there was hesitation, as though she was afraid the truth would leak out. And Ethan noticed something else too. At moments when she was distracted, the pitch of the modulator flickered. Just for a heartbeat, her real voice bled through a gentle note escaping the cage. He saw how her hands clenched every time it happened, how quickly she turned away so no one would notice. But Ethan noticed. Every time, and with each slip, the mask of the armored soldier cracked further. The villagers thought the armor was invincible, that the stranger was untouchable. But Ethan now knew the truth. Her greatest weakness wasn't a weapon, wasn't a wound. It was the very thing she was trying to hide, her voice. And sooner or later, no armor in the galaxy would be enough to silence it. The desert settlement tried to return to normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. The armored stranger's presence was a wound that refused to close. Every whisper carried her name, or at least the name they gave her, the man in armor. Ethan knew better. He carried the secret heavily, like a stone pressing against his chest. He had seen the glowing skin beneath the armor. He had heard her real voice, soft and trembling, nothing like the deep growl of the modulator, and he knew. Now that behind the steel there was a girl. One night, while the rest of the settlement slept, Ethan found her again. She stood alone at the edge of the dunes, the stars above reflecting against her visor. The desert was silent, except for the hiss of wind and the faint hum of the modulator. "Why do you always stand out here?" Ethan asked quietly as he approached. Helmet turned, the black visor hiding everything. The modulator growled. "The desert does not ask questions. It does not fear me." Ethan stepped closer. "But I do ask questions, because I want to understand you." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she reached up, pressing her armored fingers against the modulator at her throat. The hum faltered, flickered, and then died. Silence followed until her real voice spoke. "You should not." The words were fragile, heavy with pain. Ethan froze. Hearing her true voice was like watching the armor melt away. It made her real. Human, even if she wasn't one. "Why?" Ethan whispered.
What?
"Why keep yourself hidden like this? Why become someone you're not?" She turned away, staring into the endless dunes. Her voice shook as she finally spoke again. "Because my people are gone." Ethan's chest tightened. "They were hunted," she continued, her words slow, deliberate, as if each one was carved from memory. "Slaughtered because of what we were. Because we were different. My clan believed in peace, in creation, not war. But peace is weakness to those who worship strength." Her fingers curled into fists. The faint glow beneath her armor pulsed, leaking through cracks like trapped fire. "They came for us. Soldiers, raiders, even our allies betrayed us. And when they saw me young, untrained female, they laughed. They said I was nothing. They killed my father before my eyes, burned my home, and told me my kind had no place in this galaxy." Her voice broke for a heartbeat, trembling. Then she steadied it again. "So I built this armor, this mask, this voice. If the galaxy respects only the strength of men, then I would become one. If the world only fears warriors, then I would be their fear." Ethan's throat felt dry. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. He had seen men break under far less, yet she had carried this burden alone, hidden behind steel and shadows. At last, he found his voice. "You became the man in armor, so no one could see your pain." She looked at him then. For the first time, her visor lifted slightly, just enough for him to see a faint shimmer of her luminous skin in the starlight. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, bright with exhaustion and something else. "I became him," she whispered, because it was the only way to survive. Silence stretched between them. The desert wind howled softly as if mourning with her. Ethan took a step closer, lowering his voice. "But survival isn't living. You're still here. You're still you. Maybe the galaxy doesn't need another faceless warrior. Maybe it needs you." Her eyes flickered, as if she didn't believe him. "You don't understand. If they knew. If anyone knew what I really am, they would use me or kill me." "Maybe," Ethan admitted, "but hiding will kill you too." Slowly, piece by piece, she lowered her head, and for the first time, Ethan saw the weight she carried not just in her armor, but in her soul. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered. "To be told your life has no worth. To be seen as a weakness too. Erase." Ethan clenched his fists. "I do know. Maybe not the same way. But I've lived my whole life in a settlement where people look at me and see nothing more than a mechanic. A boy too weak to fight, too unimportant to matter. I know what it's like to be dismissed." Her eyes widened slightly, as if his words pierced the armor more than any weapon. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't distance, it was connection. Finally, she spoke again, softer than before. "Then you understand why I cannot stop hiding, because if I do, I will be destroyed." Ethan took a step forward. His voice was firm now, steady. "Then I'll stand beside you. If they want to destroy you, they'll have to go through me first." Her breath caught. Icy stared at him, Visa still hiding most of her face, but her glowing eyes unblinking. For the first time, she didn't feel like the armored stranger at all. She felt like someone who had been waiting for years for someone to say those words. Slowly, she reactivated her modulator. The deep growl returned, burying her true voice again. But this time it sounded weaker, as if even the machine couldn't fully cover the truth anymore. Do not make promises you cannot keep, she said. Ethan shook his head. This one I'll keep. The desert wind roared louder, sweeping across the dunes. Somewhere deep inside, the armor creaked as if straining against its own prison. The girl inside it knew her secret could not stay hidden much longer, and Ethan knew when that day came, the galaxy would never be the same again. The settlement carried on with its daily routine, but under the surface, tension still burned. The villagers avoided the armored stranger whenever possible, stepping aside as she passed, pretending not to hear the heavy thud of her boots. To them, she was still a faceless warrior, dangerous shadow that walked like a man but spoke like a machine. Only Ethan knew the truth. He had seen the girl hidden inside the armor, had heard the soft voice buried beneath the modulator's growl. He carried her secret like a fragile flame, knowing that if the others discovered it too soon, it might be snuffed out forever. One evening, while the sun set low and painted the desert sky in blood-red streaks, Ethan approached her again. Was repairing a dent in her armored fingers working clumsily with a small tool. Sparks flickered as she tried to reconnect a power line, but it snapped back in place awkwardly. You're doing it wrong, Ethan said gently. The visor turned toward him. The modulator growled. I do not need your help. Ethan crouched beside her anyway, reaching for the tool. Maybe not, but I'm better at this than you are. For a long moment, she stared at him more at least. He thought she did behind the black visor. Then, without a word, she handed him the tool. Ethan's hands moved with practiced ease, tightening the circuit, securing the plate. See, not so hard. She didn't answer. But for the first time, he sensed something different. Not suspicion, not hostility, just quiet acceptance. That night, Ethan stayed longer. They sat side by side near the water tower, the desert wind howling around them. Neither spoke for a while. Then finally, her modulator clicked off with a soft hiss. You should not waste time with me, she whispered, her real voice trembling but clear. Ethan shook his head. It's not a waste. Her glowing eyes dimmed slightly as if she couldn't believe him. Why do you trust me? Ethan thought for a moment before answering. Because when the raiders attacked, you didn't run. You could have left us. But you didn't. That says enough. Her head lowered. I fought only because I had no choice. Maybe, Ethan said softly. But choice or not, two still saved us. Silence stretched between them again. Then she whispered, I have never been trusted before. The words struck Ethan harder than any blade. He saw the weight in them, the loneliness. Years of hiding, of being hunted, of being forced to bury her true self. Trust was not just rare for her, it was alien. Then let this be the first time, Ethan said firmly. She looked at him, and though her armor still hid most of her, Ethan felt the shift. The steel mask was still there, but for the first time, it felt thinner. Over the next few days, something changed. When Ethan worked on broken engines, she sometimes stood nearby, silently watching. When guards trained, she corrected their stances. With a few sharp gestures, teaching them moves they didn't understand but instinctively obeyed. And when the children peeked at her from behind huts, she no longer turned away. She stood still, letting them stare, though never revealing more. The villagers remained cautious, but Ethan noticed something they didn't. She trusted him now. Not completely, but enough to let him see pieces of herself. One evening, as the desert night grew cold, Ethan brought her something unusual. A small metal box, dented but working. He pressed a switch, and soft music played a human song, old and simple. Her glowing eyes widened slightly. What is this? Music, Ethan said with a smile. It helps when you feel alone. She sat silently, listening. For the first time, her visor tilted upward, toward the stars, as though the melody carried her somewhere far away. When the song ended, she whispered, "We had music once too, but it is gone now." Ethan's heart ached. "Then keep this one. Let it remind you that not everything is lost." She didn't answer, but when she took the small box in her armored hand, she held it gently, almost reverently. Later that night, while most of the camp slept, Ethan woke to a strange sound. He found her sitting alone again, the box beside her. The modulator switched off, and for the first time, he heard it her humming, soft, almost too quiet for the wind to carry. Her real voice. The sound froze Ethan where he stood. It wasn't just beautiful, it was heartbreaking. A voice that had been buried under steel and machines, finally free, even if only for a moment. She looked up suddenly and saw him. For a moment, panic flashed across her glowing eyes. But Ethan didn't speak. He just sat beside her and listened. When she finally stopped, she whispered, "You are dangerous, Ethan." "Dangerous?" he asked, surprised. "You make me forget why I must hide." Her words cut deep, but Ethan only smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you stop hiding." She shook her head. "Not yet, not here, but—" She hesitated, then added softly, "I trust you." Those 3 words were more powerful than any promise. They weren't shouted, they weren't armored, they were real. And Ethan knew then the walls she had built around herself were finally beginning to fall. But trust was a dangerous thing. Because in a world built on fear and strength, trust could save them or destroy them both. The desert was not silent anymore. From the east, dust storms rose, not natural, but carried by machines. Raiders were returning, and this time, not with a handful of bikes. An entire warband thundered across the dunes, armored vehicles shaking the ground. Their banners flapped in the wind, marked with the symbol of the skull-beast. The settlement panicked. Men shouted. Women gathered children. Guards rushed to the gates with trembling hands on their weapons. The villagers knew they could not survive this one. Too many, too strong. The leader of the settlement barked orders, his voice breaking. "We'll fight to the last. Protect the children." But deep down, everyone knew they wouldn't last a single hour. And then, from the shadows of the water tower, the armored stranger stepped forward. The black visor gleamed, the heavy boots sank into the sand, and the modulator growled, "Stay back, I'll fight." The villagers froze. Fear and hope mixed in their eyes. Could this strange warrior really stand against an army? Ethan stood close, his heart pounding. He looked at her. Had the girl inside the armor and whispered, "You can't do this alone." Her visor turned toward him, him. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then her modulator buzzed low. "I was never meant to survive, only to fight." Ethan's throat tightened. "You're wrong. You were meant to live." But before he could say more, the first raider vehicles crashed into sight, weapons firing. The ground exploded in fire and dust. Guards scattered. Villagers screamed. The stranger didn't move. She stood tall, her armor glowing faintly from the cracks Ethan had once repaired. And then it happened. A rocket slammed into the settlement wall. It's a blast throwing debris across the square. Ethan dove to cover, but the stranger took the full shockwave. The armor cracked, sparks flying, plates shattering like broken glass. She staggered. The visor fractured. The modulator hissed and sputtered. The villagers gasped as the deep, growling voice cut out, and a different voice broke free. Soft, clear, undeniably feminine. No, more hiding. The helmet fell away with a clang, and for the first time, everyone saw her. Not a man. Not a faceless warrior. A girl. Her face glowed with faint blue light, delicate markings across her skin, like living stars. Her eyes burned bright, fierce, and beautiful, not with fear, but with fire. Her hair, silver and flowing, spilled from beneath the broken helm, catching the desert wind. The villagers stared, stunned into silence. The warrior they had feared was not a man of iron, but but a girl of light. The raiders, too, slowed in confusion. They had expected a soldier. Instead, they saw something alien, something they didn't understand. The girl raised her voice, no longer hidden behind a machine. "You came for blood. You will leave with nothing." Her hands glowed as she tore away the last of the broken plates. The armor that had once been her prison now fell at her feet. What remained was her true self, tall, radiant, graceful, wrapped in light that shimmered with each heartbeat. Ethan felt his chest tighten. She wasn't just beautiful. She was terrifying, magnificent, a warrior revealed. The raiders roared and charged again. But she met them head dash on. No longer hiding behind steel, her movements were faster, sharper. Blades shattered against her glowing skin. Weapons sparked and died in her hands. She leaped into their ranks with the grace of a storm, each strike dropping. An enemy with unstoppable force. The villagers watched in awe. Where they had seen a stranger before, now they saw a savior. Ethan couldn't look away. Yet he had seen glimpses of her power, but nothing like this. She wasn't the armored ghost they had whispered about. She wasn't the faceless soldier. She was alive, fierce, unbroken. The battle raged, but slowly the raiders' cries turned to screams of fear. One by one, they fell back, dragging their dead and wounded into their vehicles. Smoke trailed across the desert as they fled, leaving the settlement standing. Silence returned at last. The villagers gathered in the square, staring at the girl who stood among the wreckage. Her armor lay shattered, her modulator broken. She was exposed now. No mask, no cage. The leader of the settlement stepped forward, voice trembling. You are not what we thought." She lifted her glowing eyes, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I am not what anyone thought." The crowd was silent, unsure whether to fear her or worship her. But Ethan stepped forward before doubt could grow. "She's the one who saved us," he said firmly. "Not the armor, not the mask. Her and I. If you can't see that, then you don't deserve her protection." The villagers murmured, glancing between each other. Slowly, fear turned to respect. The children, who had once hidden behind doors, now stepped closer. Eyes wide with wonder, the girl lowered her head, her glowing hair falling across her face. "I never wanted to be seen," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "But now that you don't have to hide anymore." For a long moment, she stood still. Then slowly, she nodded. The suns rose higher, painting the desert gold again. And as the settlement rebuilt, whispers carried not of the man in armor, but of the girl who had revealed herself at last. The gorgeous warrior who had lived too long in shadows was finally stepping into the light. And Ethan knew this was only the beginning, because her secret was out, and the galaxy would soon learn that the most powerful warrior among them was not a man of war, but a girl who had chosen to survive.